Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a refreshing break, maybe got a little time for networking and laying the foundation for a new partnership or two. Speaking of new partnerships, this session is devoted to testing the mettle of 5 outstanding state-of-the-art partnerships, as we call them, each a winner in one of the 5 sectors of P4G focus. And I'll just remind you what those 5 sectors are. They span food and agriculture, water, energy, cities, and circular economy. The 5 that we're about to hear from were chosen yesterday by participants at the summit as the best sectoral example, the best example in each sector of P4G's aims. Now we are pitting these sectoral champions against each other in a contest that will determine which partnership wins the overall 2018 State of the Art Partnership of the Year award. And we'll be bestowing that award later on in our closing ceremony today. So we do this not only because it's suspenseful and fun, but also because it's an ideal way to share best partnership practices, to recognize, publicize, and learn from innovative public-private partnerships that are successfully driving sustainable development right now already. So let me just briefly take us through the ground rules here for this session. The 5 pitching teams are going to present in front of 5 very competent judges, whom I will invite to join me on the stage in just a moment. And 5 and 5, that is pretty obviously not a coincidence. The reason is we have a lead judge for each of the 5 sectors. He or she will take the initiative in providing feedback to the team for that respective sector, and then the other judges will jump in. Each team will have exactly 3 minutes for the pitch, and I'm going to be very firm in timekeeping. And after each presentation, the judges will then have 3 minutes to provide their comments, their feedback, and their advice. The teams will be judged according to 4 criteria. Here they are. Impact. Has the partnership demonstrated actual outcomes? Innovation. Does the partnership address a target SDG, a Sustainable Development Goal, in a new way? Scale. Has the partnership shown growth since its launch? Can it be replicated to other markets? And 4th, implementation viability. Can the partnership attract commercial investment? And we've heard a number of times in the course of the summit so far how difficult that can be. Later, the judges will convene backstage to deliberate and make a final decision on the winner for the 2018 State of the Art Partnership Award, and that will be given in our closing ceremony. So now, it's my pleasure to invite the judges to the stage, and I'll just read off their names. Masiyiwa. He is chairman and founder of Econet and lead judge for food and agriculture. Strive, great to have you with us. Just here, if you would. Hans-Peter Lankes is vice president of the IFC World Bank, lead judge for circular economy. Great to see you, Hans-Peter, right there. Birgitte Qvist-Sørensen is General Secretary Dan Church Aid and lead judge for water. Welcome, right there. Lise Kingo is Executive Director and CEO of UN Global Compact and lead judge for energy. That'll be your place, right there. And Soo Young Lee is CEO of Kolon Eco One, lead judge for cities. Great to have you with us as well, Soo Young. And we are just going to plunge right in now with our first team. I'm going to invite them to the stage now to present in the sector food. And this team is called Korthalt Commitment 2025. Please join us on stage. And here's the team. Just one person. Very good.
One person.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to begin with the pitch right away when I say go. And as you know, you have exactly 3 minutes. Please, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be here at such a prestigious event. I'm Markus Gova from WRAP in the United Kingdom, and we specialize in public-private partnerships. We run them in construction, clothing, plastics, and of course food, which is what the Courtauld commitment is all about. And I care about food so much because for every 2 tons of food that we eat, a ton is wasted. And that's why 1 in 9 people go to bed hungry. But also the climate change impact of producing all that food we throw away is massive, absolutely massive. And in fact, if food waste was a country, it would be the 3rd largest emitter in the world after the US and China. So if we don't fix food, we can't fix climate change. It's that simple. But there is a solution, and it's solutions like public-private partnerships, like the Courtauld commitment. Now, this is one in the UK that brings together the whole supply chain, 163 signatories. And together, they put 93% of the UK's food on our tables. So if they change, everything changes. And that's the power of public-private partnerships. When you get them, everybody committed. And they do that by reducing food waste, redistributing surplus food to people who are hungry, and diverting food waste, recycling food waste. And if you look in detail, you see that it's touching almost every single Sustainable Development Goal, but particularly 17, because without partnership and collaboration, it wouldn't be possible. And the impact is really quite huge. Since we started this, and it's the 4th iteration, we keep innovating, we have saved 3.5 million tons of waste, and we've reduced the UK's food waste by 1/5, and that's massive. So this makes a big difference, and we have the data to show it. But innovation is really at the heart. As I said, it's the 4th one. And it's all about reinventing how we produce, supply, how we sell, and how we consume food, changing everything. And you can see some of those there that we use. It really makes a difference. But it's not just about the environment, it's about the economy and business too. And our work with the World Resources Institute has shown that there's a 14-to-1 payback. So for every $1 you invest in preventing food waste, you get $14 back. And that's why it's being taken up around the world so strongly. And in fact, similar approaches are now operating in Norway, in Denmark, here in Denmark, in Hungary, Netherlands, Spain, Germany. And we're working on ones in the US, in Canada, Australia, South Africa, China, and Indonesia. So this is a powerful way to work together to really change the world. And if we do that, we really can all together unite in the food waste fight and stop food waste. Thank you very much.
Let's just point out that he came in 20 seconds under. Very good. Thank you very much for that presentation, and I'll just turn it right over to the lead judge for this sector strive.
Great. No, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You know, this is a huge problem. And, you know, I chair AGRA, which looks at the challenge of smallholder farmers. I struggled a little bit to understand what is your solution. You defined the problem extremely well, but I was battling through to really pick out what it is you're doing.
It's about taking evidence and understanding the supply chain, understanding where the waste is, and the hotspots that I mentioned. I would have said, with more time, I'd have given you more detail, but then targeting those hotspots. And if you have everybody working together, then you can get the change. Sometimes an action that somebody takes in the chain benefits somebody else. So it's only by collaboration you can get that. But we have from farm to fork involved in this. We even have the retailers, the sellers of food, agreeing to sell less food by helping their customers to prevent food waste. So it's really about collaboration and evidence and knowing where to act. Target, measure, act is the mantra that we use.
Great, thank you.
Other thoughts from the judges?
Yes, I very much like the way that you are able to scale this model, because you create a partnership, a commitment device at the national level, but it's something that can be replicated, and you are replicating it. There are some of the very same companies, I guess, the multinationals, who reappear in other settings. Can you sort of globalize this, or do you need to move step by step?
I think that's part of the power, because we have advocates, ambassadors. So if we go to other parts of the world, some of the big multinationals will help to lead it. But it's actually, you can't just take it and drop it somewhere else. You have to tailor it. You need local partners who can help you to implement it. So we can't just take Courtauld and drop it somewhere else and make it work. One of my colleagues is working in Mexico at the moment, trying to start something in Mexico on this. I'm working with Mexican partners to make sure it's right there. The biggest part was understanding the evidence so we know where to act. And there'll be some partners there who we know from our other work, and they will help. So they'll help, but it's not enough.
Birgitte?
Yeah, I like it because you also mobilize the local communities. I think the last P in the public-private partnership is the people.
Yes.
And I think it's important when you enter into these new projects also to mobilize consumers, mobilize local communities, and mobilize the people. So I thought that was very interesting.
Thank you. It's all about people, yes.
Just go right down the line. We'll just take comments from the last two judges as well, and then wrap it up.
Thanks for a great presentation. I have been following your initiative for the recent years, and I think it's very impressive, and I wanted to emphasize that I think the scale that you have been able to reach is really impressive, and I like the very simple way you communicate about what you want to achieve and what you have achieved already.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Soo?
Yeah, thank you very much for your innovative, the actions to reduce the food waste. Food waste is a big issue, mainly in Asia. I think we want to treat as much as possible to our guests, but it's essential to save the environment. So I just hope you the best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Then I'll say we'll wrap it up with that, and thanks so much for your pitch.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
And I will now ask to the stage our next presenting team for the sector energy, and their name is District Cities Initiatives. District Cities, please join us. And you may begin with your pitch. I see you're all ready to go, so I'm going to just get the clock ready to start, and please begin now.
Ladies and gentlemen, how many people here work in climate and energy? And how many of you have been discussing heating and cooling? My guess is, from the show of hands and from my own experience, most of the discussions have been focused on power, maybe transport. This is important, but we're missing a huge trick if we don't focus more on heating and cooling, which consumes 1/3 of our global energy, and almost all of it is met by fossil fuels.
The good news is that already today, cities and countries are decarbonizing their heating and cooling sectors with one technology called district energy. District energy is a technology that's not just proven, but future-proof. And you don't have to go far. We started our day yesterday at the DI building, which is entirely cooled by seawater. Seawater from the harbor of Copenhagen. It's as clean, you can take a dip into it in the summer. So Denmark has been able to slash their CO2 emissions by 20% through this technology.
And this is why at UN Environment, we launched the District Energy in Cities initiative. We want to take these examples and replicate them all around the world. Consider just one of the 36 cities we're working in, Banja Luka, the second largest city in Bosnia and Herzegovina. With the help of the initiative and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, we helped the city upgrade its network, and by doing so, we increased the share of renewable energy by 75%, we slashed CO2 emissions, we improved air quality, and we helped the city save $1 million annually in fuel costs. For a young initiative that started with less than $1 million, we've shown big results.
Results that are grounded in innovation. Innovation not only in technology, but in policy making and as well in business models. On the technology side, you can see that we enable local energy resources to be utilized. District energy is like your giant battery that stores renewables like wind and solar. At the same time, you can reuse waste heat from your data centers, from production, from water treatment plants that otherwise would be wasted. In the EU alone, all our building stock could be heated by the waste heat possible today.
When you consider that the average connection to district energy worldwide is only 7%, you can see our huge potential for growth. In 4 years, we've managed to triple our partners, triple our funding, and increase the number of cities we're working in 6-fold, together with the accompanying investments and impacts. Take India, for example. When we first started working in India, district energy was not on the agenda. Today, district energy is in India's national cooling action plan to phase down HFCs. It's also in Chile's presidential plan to mitigate air pollution.
And the commercial potential is huge as well. If you take the first example of Banja Luka.
In Banja Luka, we unlocked $22 million in project finance. Half of this was from the private sector. So as you can see, district energy is not only good for the planet, but it's also good for the pocket.
On the last point, the utility was happy, but so were we as the private sector. As Danfoss can tell you, we would not have been able to achieve these results and develop the markets like that without this partnership. It's not possible. It's only possible in partnerships.
Thank you for your attention, and if you excuse the pun, we hope we've left you with a warm feeling about it.
Thank you very, very much. And I will hand over to the energy sector judge, Lise.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies, for a very convincing, strong presentation. I think you are living up to the criteria for being an excellent partnership in all its dimensions. I think it's so encouraging to see that you have an anchoring in the UN, and therefore you have a very clear multi-stakeholder focus on your program. It's also part for the of the Sea for All, Rachel Kite's very, very impressive initiative, and I know that as part of that you are in a very good company with other really efficient energy initiatives as well. I really also like the way that you link with several other of the SDGs to signal that what you are trying to do will have a major impact on many other spheres as well. So I have a question for you that I'm sure you have also thought about. But I think in the way you work in the many countries that you are involved in, are you making sure to build your program on universal principles like anti-corruption, like human rights, to make sure that you really drive, how should I say, a values-based project?
Indeed, we work with many, many companies, and several of them are part of the UN Compact, actually, and we ensure that we work with local stakeholders. As part of the project, we bring together many different stakeholders and try to build a common vision. And by doing so, we ensure that we hear the voices of all the different stakeholders on the ground, and that might be concerns with regards to sustainability or concerns with regards to how it impacts their communities. And only by working together with the local stakeholders and through a partnership can we build a common vision that is sustainable and drives these kinds of results over the long term.
I might just add to that from the Danfoss perspective. Of course, we're a partner of the Global Compact as well. And sometimes in the beginning, it was a bit frustrating maybe for the private sector because things like that take a bit longer, right? If you bring all the stakeholders on board, instead, you know what the technology is and it could be very fast. But because the UN, and it's anchored in the UN principles, you get everybody on board and by that make it already sustainable because people own it themselves and then the business case comes from itself. But by really going through all the steps, we made sure that, that it's not just living up to the standards, but also that then all the other, our competitors are actually bidding into the project because it's an open platform. And that's really the strength.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other thoughts on the part of the judges, briefly?
Yes, just give me a sense of your organization. How are you organized? How many people are you, and what does it cost you?
Sure. So we started with, as I mentioned, less than 1 million to create the platform, and today we stand at 3.9 million in funding. We're working in 14 countries and 36 cities. We have 45 partners in the initiative, and most of our work in the countries that we're doing is leveraged with all our partnerships co-finance. So we're actually a small secretariat with maybe, well, there's myself, as in terms of the UN as the secretariat of the initiative. There's myself and a few members of the team that are here today, actually. And so altogether we're about 5 people. But the work that we do and the impact that we achieve is because we work with our partners in the countries on the ground and leverage the partnership to make the 3.9 million create the kind of impact that we've described today.
And additionally, like in Banja Luka, then we also access the CTCN funding. So bringing in different streams and helping the city really to see what's out there, not just develop the project from the beginning and create the market, but then bringing in the financing that's already available but might not be common knowledge.
Yes, I think one of the biggest points that we've learned from this initiative is that we've learned to use a small amount of funding to leverage big results, and it's only possible through partnerships. And just to answer on the last point, we're funded by the GEF, we're funded by Denmark, Italy, and by the Kigali Cooling Efficiency Program. So we have a breadth of funding partners who see that leverage.
We've got a red light on our clock here, so let me just ask, is there any other judge who really needed to ask a question? No, good. Then I'll say thank you very much to the two teachers from district cities. And we move on now to the category of cities, and I would like to invite on stage our cities team, Global Industry Partnership on Soot-Free Clean Bus Fleets. Kind of says it all right there. Please join us. And I'm just going to get our clock queued up to go. So please begin your pitch now.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to talk to you about a global partnership for soot-free clean buses. And we are focusing on buses because we get a huge bang for the buck. Buses are about 1% of the on-road vehicle fleet globally, and yet they emit 25% of what we call fine particles, also black carbon, which contribute both to air pollution, degrade public health, and also global warming. The global partnership that I'm going to talk to you about today is a combination between business leaders and cities. In the slide before you, you see that we have 4 global manufacturers of heavy-duty vehicles, 2 from Europe, Scania, Volvo, Cummins, one from the US, Cummins, and 1 from China and BYD. We also have several partners from non-governmental organizations. The International Council on Clean Transportation is my organization. We have C40 Cities, the UN Environment Program, Senator Mario Molina in Chile, and the CCAC. The challenge that we have is that buses, by and large, throughout the world are not as clean as those buses that are on the streets of Copenhagen or throughout the streets of Europe or the United States or Japan. And the challenge for bus manufacturers is that for the most part, it is easier for bus manufacturers to sell outmoded, older diesel buses to the developing world than to sell them the newest, cleanest technology. And therein lies the purpose of the partnership. So the 4 manufacturers that you saw in the previous slide have all committed to selling the world's cleanest technologies throughout the world in the 20 targeted cities that I'll show you in a minute. You'll also notice that some manufacturers are not on the list because it's not easy to sign up to that declaration. So Daimler, for example, and MAN, Daimler being one of the largest bus manufacturers in the world, has not yet signed up, just to give you a sense of the level of commitment. Right. So why do we care? Do I have 45 seconds left? Yeah. I've gone 45.
No, you only have 45 left, and we should talk about it.
Buses are very dirty in most of the world. This is a big problem. They're cleaning them up in Bogota. We are working with 20 cities, and we've focused on a small number of them right now. Istanbul, Mexico City, São Paulo, and Santiago have joined the coalition, and many others are set to do it. And the challenge is that the increased costs in clean transportation is actually offset by the cost of ownership. And so cleaner buses are also good for the bottom line. And our next steps are to scale up with better financing, increase the number of manufacturers on board, and also scale up the number of cities. Thanks very much.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much indeed, and I'll hand it over to our city's judge, Soo, for comment and thought.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It is very impressive because carbon trade market now in the world is concentrated mainly on the industry side, but the transportation side is kind of neglected. And the buses plays a key role on the public transportation. And I have a question that you're focused on the new technology, electric cars or hydrogen cars manufacturers, mainly in the advanced countries. However, the developing countries, the buses, they are imported, the old buses have a huge CO2 emission. So what's your idea to introduce your business to these developing countries?
So that's a great question and a really good one, right? So it's not just about new buses, it's about used buses as well that are imported around the world, right? One of the best way to do it, there are trade limitations, so you have to work with that. One of the best ways of cleaning up bus fleets in countries that have mainly imported used vehicles is to put a age limit on the age of the imported vehicles. Let's say 4 years, no older than 4 years old. Therefore, you're getting the cleanest technology from those exporting countries. And that is one very simple but very enforceable way of making a huge difference.
Thank you. Who else? Please, Birgitte.
Yeah, just thank you very much. Very interesting. I was just curious to know, as part of this project, do you also do some mobilization or advocacy for people actually to take the bus and actually, advertising using public transport, and particularly in big cities, is very good. So is that part of the project as well?
So thanks for that question. So the slide that I didn't get to talk about very much, there's an excellent bus rapid transit system in Bogota, Colombia. And it's very, very popular. But it is becoming unpopular because they're older buses that are spewing black fumes. That's the slide that you saw. And so when Mayor Peñalosa was going to buy new buses, he had inadvertently not included the cleanest buses required in the tender. There was a huge tweet storm of opposition in Bogota. He has now withdrawn that tender and put out a new one requiring soot-free buses, and 3 of our 4 industry partners have applied for that tender, right? So that will both improve the image of public transportation and galvanize sort of more interest in doing it. But that's a great question, thank you.
Strive, please.
For someone like me who didn't really know the problem that well, you defined it extremely well. And I appreciated that. But you have left me with a lot of questions. It's almost like you just got me to know what the issue was, and then I didn't get to. So for instance, what does success look like? Where are we? Where are we on this path? How long have you been doing it? Where do we go?
Great question. So right now, about 20% of buses produced globally are outfitted with world-class emission controls.
20%, okay.
We're looking for 100%.
Sure.
Right? And we're going to do it city by city by city, because cities are the lighthouses and oftentimes will drive the rest of the country. Right? So when China and India implement these standards over the next 2 years, we'll go from 20% to 40%. And with our policy driving cities around all of the key regions in the world, we hope to then drive that by 2025 to 100%. The last thing I'll say also, it's not just cleaning up the diesel, it's transitioning to electric drive buses as well, electric buses as well, and this will do that as well.
Right.
Thank you very much. I think we will have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your presentation.
You so much.
And we move on now to the sector water. And presenting for water is Strategic Water Partners Network. And it's a pleasure to welcome our pitcher. And I'll just get us ready to start, please. Yeah, okay, good. Please go now.
Thank you. My name is Nick Tandy. I'm with the Strategic Water Partners Network. I guess you all know about Cape Town, the city that almost ran out of water. I have to tell you that the challenge that we have in the country is much broader than that. With a business-as-usual approach, we anticipate that by 2030, South Africa will have a 17% gap between the water that is supplied and that which is demanded by industry, by business, domestic users, etc. What we did was to pull together all the key stakeholders that are not only affected by this situation, but were critical to the solution as well. We organized them around working groups, and these working groups would identify what is the next best thing that could help us out of this crisis, and then together we conceptualized this work, scaled it out, and then sometimes it has a life of its own. These partners, by the way, are sometimes competitors. Building the trust between them to get them going is stuff that is exciting. It keeps you awake. You wake up the next day and you do it again. So, what came out of all this? I'll give you a few examples. The irrigation sector in South Africa uses about 66% of the water. Losses are about 40%, right? We found an information management system that was able to automate the process of data collection, data processing, so that those that make decisions around water management in irrigation schemes have timely, reliable, and more accurate information. The operational efficiencies reduced massive water losses. We did this in 4 irrigation schemes. We're expanding to 14, and the government has taken this up into policy. Financiers of agriculture are considering using this as part of environmental and social governance. Secondly, in municipalities, where the water supply network leaks about 37% of all the water that is supplied, we built a performance-based contract that allows an entrepreneur, a specialist who wants to take some risk, to be able to take that risk with a tool that allows them to do this in a way that they trust together with the municipality, and that way we're trying to enable public-private partnerships. We have one project where we're trying to demonstrate this. Very lastly, South Africa is as a country largely built on mining for over a century. What's happened now is not only did mining develop the country, also led to pollution of water resources. We've put together a public-private partnership body that's going to finance, identify what are the measures needed to solve those liabilities. What have we learned by doing this, ladies and gentlemen? We've learned that the future solutions that we need are decentralized and dispersed in space, in revenue streams, and also in institutional mandate. It's messy stuff. We continue to do it every day, and with your support, we want to do more, and we're going out to more countries. Thank you very much.
So our judge on water is Birgitte, and I'll hand it right over to her.
Thank you very much for the presentation, energetic presentation. Yes, we all followed what happened in Cape Town. I think it's interesting because you actually invited a lot of stakeholders into a room trying to look at, okay, what are the problems? You knew more or less that, but what are the solutions? So I think that's really interesting, not just going for one solution, and also the fact that you're looking at it with a holistic view. It's drinking water, it's irrigation, it's many elements of water. So I thought that was very interesting. What I'm curious to know is, you said you're going to expand it into all of South Africa, but what are your plans for scaling this? And have you thought of even scaling this good idea beyond South Africa?
My first response to that question is, I've just recently left this partnership and joined the more global partnership that started us, which is hosted in the World Bank, called the 2030 Water Resources Group. And we have this work happening elsewhere in Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and then elsewhere in Latin America and in South Asia as well. So there is a global network doing this work. The way we conceptualized scale was both being able to develop a pipeline of projects that, say, project preparation facilities could take up, because these are new ways of doing things, and typically project preparation facilities are as siloed sometimes as our governments. And so that's the value add that we thought we could bring. Develop that project pipeline, and that's stuff that we've started to do. The other way we conceptualized scale was the ability to illustrate something new and then have it come up to policy. And the irrigation work illustrates that. And it's not just government policy, but it's also policy development finance institutions that are saying, can we use this as part of our financing arrangements? Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments, Hans-Peter?
Yeah. I like really very much how you put it. I agree, your pitch is excellent. This is something where the technology is there, it's commercially viable, and what you're doing is you're creating a context in which companies put that further up their priority list so that they get moving on it. And I think that is really the purpose of partnership. Now, there's a curious commonality with another pitch we saw earlier from Courtauld, which had the food companies, and where water saving is also an important objective. And I just wonder whether you could leverage each other using the same networks in different countries.
I imagine that would work. It will have to be, I think, around how these agribusinesses in the value chain could help manage what is their supply chain risk that emanates from, say, agricultural production, but to keep it very focused to some specific actions that we've seen could have scale and could work. So I think yes, for sure, but one would need to think about it carefully because the transaction costs of just setting up one partnership are quite high, and when you start combining them, of course, we'll need to look into the trade-offs. But thank you, yes.
And that's where I still want to get to your numbers. Well, what do you look like success-wise? Can you give us a sense? What have you achieved in South Africa in numbers?
South Africa has about 78, I think, government irrigation schemes, right? So if we say those 78 are largely responsible for the irrigation water demand, which is about 67% of water demand in South Africa. We've gone out and we tested our tool, the information management tool, in 4 irrigation schemes. And in those 4 irrigation schemes, with an investment of about $200,000, we were able to achieve water savings, 55 million cubic meters, which is about half the use of a medium-sized city in South Africa. In this stage, we're going out to 14 irrigation schemes, but we should stop. We should stop because part of our scaling process is to ensure that there is a business model for this to continue. And then what we've started to concentrate on is to provide that business support to the entrepreneur who does this work and to lobby government DFIs to take this very seriously. So that's just one example.
Thank you very much. And our clock is showing red. We'll have to leave it there. Let's give him a warm round of applause, please. Thank you. And it's my pleasure to welcome Team 5, our final team from New Wave Plastics, and they are pitching for the sector circular economy. Please join us on stage. New Wave Plastics. And please get ready, and let's get our clock ready. Please begin now.
Next Wave Plastics was launched in December 2017 with the express purpose to keep plastics in our economy and out of our ocean. Every year, annually, we produce 300 million metric tons of plastic, yet we only recycle 9%. It's thought that 79% of all plastic has been lost to the environment, either on land or in the ocean. When it's in the ocean, we know it breaks down into microplastics that are almost impossible to extract. 3 years ago, Dell Corporation accepted the challenge to figure out what a global technology company could do to be part of the solution. Fast forward 18 months later, and Dell produced this. This is ocean-bound plastic contrived packaging that sits underneath computers when they're shipped to provide them with cushion. The plastic comes from Haiti. And what Dell learned through this process was that they could integrate ocean-bound plastic into the packaging, and they could start to make a difference. But they also recognized that in the face of the plastic pollution crisis, they are one very small company. Today, I'm pleased to announce that we have, standing alongside of Dell, 8 additional global corporations, NGOs, and all the leading plastic pollution scientists. Together, they are working as hard as they can to eliminate a minimum of 25,000 tons of ocean-bound plastic by the year 2025 in alignment with SDG 14.1. Now, these companies are working hard together to produce products that utilize plastic that was once bound for the ocean, but they have intercepted it, and they've turned it into carpet tiles by Interface or chairs by Human Scale. Every Human Scale chair integrates 2 pounds of ocean-bound fishing nets that were once bound for the coast of Chile to harm marine life. And Trek Bicycles, a bicycle company in the United States, recently produced this. This is a water bottle holder for a bicycle that integrates nylon from ocean-bound fishing nets. These companies are competitors sitting at the table together. They're cross-industry leaders working in a transparent and open source fashion so that they collectively can work together to create the first global network of ocean-bound plastic suppliers. But make no mistake, this is not easy. This is very difficult work to do. First, these companies have to create internal buy-in to becoming part of Next Wave. They have to identify a use case, a product, and then a supplier that can supply the material they need, like Plastics Global right here in Denmark, who we work with. And then they have to work through the hard work of producing this in a way that does more good than harm to the communities from which the plastic is derived and ensures that we're going to be able to achieve our SDG 14.1. Actions matter more than words. These companies are committed to continuing to work together, to inspire others, so that together we can go further faster and we can achieve change at scale. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'll hand over to our plastics lead judge, Hans-Peter.
You have found an approach to tackle what has finally found its way onto the agenda. This is a huge problem that we have to deal with, and so that is a great thing. Now, I see this as a transition solution, because in fact we should get rid of plastic. Yes. And there are countries like Rwanda, Kenya that are going forward and actually prohibiting the use of plastic bags, and this can be taken further forward. We also should probably change behaviors so that people don't dump their plastic the way they do. But in the meantime, this is a very important approach to clean up the oceans. You address the demand side, as I see it. You find a way of getting the demand side organized and boosting demand for waste plastic. And then that will lead to increased supply as well, to increased collection and aggregation. And maybe you would want to say something about that. How is that actually going to happen?
So, very insightful questions, thank you. So what these companies are really working on doing, you're right, they're trying to create demand, essentially create value from what's considered a waste product today, and essentially turn it into a commodity, only as long as we have to. Eventually, these supply chains should disappear. If we've all done our job well, they should go away. But in the meantime, the companies, it's difficult to find suppliers, unlike Plastics Global and a few others. But these companies are actively working in Indonesia, they're working in Haiti, they're now exploring Thailand and Vietnam, and Taiwan and India to start to develop supply chains and to bring them up to the standards that the companies need from a chain of custody standpoint, just like any supplier they would work with, and also get to price parity. So the supply chain side is equally as important as the demand side, even more so, I would say. And the companies are actively working right now to benchmark against each other's supply chain development efforts and really come up with a common set of principles for how they develop it together.
Thank you very much. So I think I first had a comment from Lise, and then from Birgitte, and then we'll have to wrap it up.
Thanks for a great presentation, and in a very urgent space, so to speak. It's really interesting to hear you talk about this being the sort of first global network to address the plastics challenge. But I wondered, in terms of going to scale and sort of try to act really quickly in this space, how are you working with other organizations that are also in this space to sort of really get together and do a sort of concerted action?
One of our core principles is being open source, and collaborative is another one. And with those two principles front and center, we are actively engaging Circulate Capital and Closed Loop Partners, Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and others that are really working in various areas to solve this problem across the entire spectrum. Now, on the supply chain development side, one of the gentlemen that presented yesterday, we had dinner last night, and it had a really robust conversation about taking the work he's been doing in India and now in Indonesia, and how do we apply that supply chain development best practice to what we're doing. So we're actively seeking partners. We know that even though we call this the first global network of ocean-bound supply chains. We aren't the first ones to start to do this work, and we have a lot to learn from others.
Thank you. Birgitte?
Yeah, thank you very much. I also think it's very exciting, and I think also there is a consumer demand for these products. It's very hip to get products that's made of this kind of plastic. What I'm thinking, in the production or in the product, what happens whenever I've used my laptop that's been used by the ocean plastic? Maybe you did explain it, but I didn't quite understand it. So is there another circular thing in it, or?
Yeah, there is. There is. And we launched a year ago. A lot of work has been going into creating these products. What the Next Wave member companies are really focused on right now is to ensure 100% recovery of this and 100% recyclability, and that there is an end of life for this. Now, the companies are selecting their products so that they have maximum lifespan. This water bottle cage should always stay on the bicycle that it was made for. Bicycles are going to be sold because they have high value. It's very unlikely that this product is ever going to make its way back into the ocean. But in case it breaks, how does a consumer turn it back into Trek bicycles so they can get a replacement or a discount? And then Trek can take this material and reuse it. So we're working on that. We don't have a perfect one-for-one solution, but it's absolutely top of mind for the companies. And what you'll see over the course of the next year is a lot of thought leadership on what is recoverability? What is that word? What is recyclability? Where do we sell these products? Do we sell them in places that they can be recycled? If not, should we actually start changing the way that the companies think about their supply chain and how they sell these products?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Sorry to other judges if you had a comment, but I'm afraid we have to close it down now out of fairness to all of our pitchers. So, ladies and gentlemen, and dear judges, I think we've heard some very, very impressive pitches here. Clearly, it's not going to be an easy job for the judges. I think we probably don't envy you, but I know we're all very filled with suspense to see which of these truly impressive, high-quality teams does, in fact, win the award. And I think what we've heard is clearly tribute to P4G and its ability to really shine a light on these kinds of initiatives and hopefully also help them scale up and make contact with others, as we heard a couple of them say they had done right here at the summit. So this does bring our final plenary session of the morning to a close, but if everybody will just stay in their places for one more moment, I just want to give you a little bit of information about what is still in store. Up next are 4 topical breakout sessions, and you're welcome to attend any breakout session you like. I'll just briefly read out what they are. You see them up here on the screen. On the first topic concerns digital platforms and new technologies and drivers of sustainability, and that will include top representatives of tech companies. Please go to Studio 4 if that's the panel that you would like to take part in. Second topic features a panel discussion on resource-efficient solutions. That's very interesting and will include, among others, His Excellency Mark Rutte, Prime Minister of the Netherlands, and the CEO of Novozymes, Peter Holk-Nielsen. And if you want to do that panel, then please go to Studio 2. Third topic, cities and sustainable industrial parks as levers for innovation and growth. And we have quite an interesting panel there as well with leading figures from both the public and private sectors. That's in Studio 3. And finally, the fourth topic takes place right here in this hall and addresses the question of how to create an enabling regulatory framework for public-private partnerships. And that will be delving, amongst other things, into those blended finance models and other initiatives to leverage funding streams. So that's what's in store right now. We have staff outside who will guide you to those other rooms, to the various studios that I mentioned, so you can ask for directions. And I wish everybody really productive breakout sessions and look forward to seeing you at the awards ceremony this afternoon, where we'll find out what they decide. Let's give them a warm round of applause as well. Thank you. Thank you. That was excellent.
Thank you. That was
I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Strive, I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. That was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
I have my favorite.